Hello everyone, my name is Nick Infernus, and welcome back to another comic book review. Now, this is going to be a little bit more of a more infamous movie in the comic book movie genre. Simply because this is a prime example of the ongoing problem, or at least to my knowledge, the ongoing problem, I hope it's not ongoing, of studio meddling. And if you read the title, you know what we're looking at. We're looking at Justice League, or as fans of the Snyderverse call it, Joss-tice League. Why do they refer to it as Justice League? Because while Zack Snyder was working on it originally, they kicked him out and replaced him with Joss Whedon. And now, I don't think Joss Whedon is even credited when you look up the movie. I'm sure he's credited in the film, but when you just look it up, when you look up like who the director is, it just says Zack Snyder. Like, of course, I will gladly correct myself in the comments if this ends up being false. But at least to my knowledge, when I went to rent this movie to watch it for the first time, under director, it just said Zack Snyder. It said nothing about Joss Whedon, just Snyder. And believe me, that causes a lot of problems between the two directors. I mean, not necessarily a lot of problems, but it does cause one significant problem. But before we get to that significant problem, let's just go over what worked in the movie, at least for me, as someone who has yet to see the director's cut of the movie. You know, that 4 hour epic that everyone agrees is better than this. So, the big thing with having two different directors for a movie is that it's very easy to tell what parts come from which director. When it comes to the stuff from Zack Snyder, that's all the serious character moments where he set up different plot lines for each character to have. And when it would focus on those, it works pretty well. Like I don't know if I'm pretty sure they didn't touch on anything with Aquaman in the movie, but at least with Cyborg and Flash, it sets up very interesting character arcs for both of them that they just don't go through with because they only have 2 hours. Screw you, WB. But the idea is certainly there. That, and even though Steppenwolf isn't really that great of a villain, he is a very credible threat. Like, he seems like someone who could definitely do a lot of damage with the mother boxes. And I do also like the mythology that they set up within this movie about the different mother boxes and where they hide them. And they definitely make a lot of sense because they're places that are generally hidden from society, whether it be Atlantis or the island that Wonder Woman is from, whose name I can't remember. And then one of them is just buried somewhere. Okay, so I guess not all of them make sense, but 2 out of 3, I'd say it's pretty good. And I'm not going to lie, when all 6 members of the Justice League are finally together taking down Steppenwolf, it's decently satisfying. It's not the most satisfying thing ever. Like, it's not nearly satisfying as the final battle of Endgame, that's for sure. I mean, this is a completely different fish, but still. I guess a better example would be it's not as satisfying as seeing the Avengers getting ready to take out the Chitauri. I almost muddled that. It's still it's still a fun scene, but it could have been better. And honestly, the whole movie could have been better if they had just let Zack Snyder do his thing. But nope, they had to bring in Joss Whedon and also bring in the biggest problem with this whole movie. Tonally, it feels very uneven. Some moments are dark and serious. Some moments are goofy humor. And it is very obvious which parts come from which director. Obviously, the serious stuff comes from Zack Snyder and his original vision. The goofy stuff comes from Joss Whedon with all the stuff they either added in or reshot and all that. Like, of course, I've already had Zack Snyder's Justice League spoiled for me a little bit with what this Flash does during this finale. And I can definitely say that is way better than what they have him do in this movie, where he's the butt end of jokes, he's clumsy, and in the finale, he pushes a car and then is outdone by Superman a couple seconds later. in the Snyder Cut, they have him back through time into an explosion to undo Cataclysm. Why would you take that out? Like, of course, I haven't seen Zack Snyder's Justice League yet, so I'm not going to hammer this movie for any changes made, except for that one, because that is a stupid, stupid change. And in general, the humor feels very out of place, not just in this movie, but in the franchise. Like, all the movies up to this point have definitely been trying to go for this more dark and serious tone, and even this feels like it's trying to go for a dark and serious tone and continue that, and the humor just feels out of place, not to mention that it's not that effective, because even the actors sound like they don't want to be saying the jokes. Like, at one point, I think Batman says a joke, and you can just tell Ben Affleck is not having fun with that, and honestly, I can't blame him, because the humor in general is just not great. And because of that unevenness, and at the same time, no, let's not even focus on the unevenness. Let's just focus on the fact that this movie is only 2 hours long. And obviously, of course, Zack Snyder's Justice League, 4 hours. Obviously, there's a lot more going on in that movie, so you need more runtime. And from what I hear, it's very satisfying by the end. But this is only 2 hours. And most of the characters, because of it, feel paper thin. Like, well, let's just excuse Batman, Wonder Woman, and Superman here. Flash, Aquaman, and Cyborg don't feel properly developed. The most development any of them get is from Cyborg, and even then, he's just kind of there. That's it. He's just there to complain about his past and then be the guy who solves the mother box. Other than that, there's not a lot else to him. So, in general, this is a movie with some really good ideas that are carried over from the original cut of the film, and at the same time has some decent satisfaction and a credible threat and mythology, but because it has also has very mediocre humor and a runtime that leaves half the team falling flat. So in general, a very mixed bag, and I debated on obviously the score was going to be in the 2 range, but I eventually decided on a 2.5 because I did have some fun with it, but it's just very uneven, not long enough, and it's just okay. I'm sure that when I see the Zack Snyder version, that my opinion will completely change. But for right now, the best thing I can say about this movie is that it's okay. Not horrible, not good either, just fine. Anyways, guys, that's going to be it for this review. If you enjoyed it, you know what to do. I'm not going to bore you with all that generic stuff. And until the next video, take care and Godspeed.